Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight's story isn't about a monster, a curse, or a place you can point to on a map. It's about a man who was remembered clearly, spoken about casually, and missed deeply, yet, according to every official system that governs reality, never existed at all. The first person to notice something wrong was a junior HR administrator named Claire. She had been tasked with digitizing old employment records after a routine audit flagged missing paperwork. It was dull work. Names, dates, salary bands. The kind of task where your mind drifts and the day dissolves. Then she reached a gap. Between two long-term employees, both hired in the late 1990s, there was a stretch of time where performance reviews referenced someone else, casual mentions as discussed with Martin, approved after Martin's sign-off, desk reassigned following Martin's departure. Claire frowned. There was no Martin in the database. She assumed it was a filing error. That happened often enough with legacy systems. She searched again. No employee by that name. She widened the net. Nicknames, middle names, spelling variations, nothing. At lunch, she asked her supervisor. "Oh, Martin," he said immediately, without hesitation. "Yeah, tall guy. Always wore that grey jacket. Bit quiet. Sat over by the windows." Claire laughed, relieved. "Great. Do you know his surname?" Her supervisor paused, just for a second, then frowned. "That's strange. I don't." By the end of the day, half the office had been asked. Everyone remembered him. Not vaguely, not uncertainly, they remembered specifics. His voice low, calm, slightly hoarse when he laughed. His habit of stirring tea, absent-mindedly long after the sugar dissolved. The way he leaned back in his chair when thinking, hands folded behind his head, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Someone remembered that he hated the printer because it jammed whenever he used it. Someone else remembered borrowing his charger. Another remembered him staying late one Friday to help finish a proposal. They remembered where he sat. And that was when Claire walked over to the desk by the windows. It was empty now. A generic workstation, but the carpet beneath it was more worn than the surrounding floor. The light from the window hit it differently, as though the space itself had been occupied longer than the others. Facilities records showed the desk had been there for years, but there was no assignment history attached to it. HR escalated the issue. They checked payroll. No payments to anyone named Martin matching the timeline. They checked tax submissions, national insurance, pension contributions, nothing. They checked ID, badge logs, every swipe accounted for, except for a handful of entries linked to an identifier that no longer mapped to any employee profile. It pulled email archives. There were emails from Martin, short professional messages, meeting confirmations. "Thanks, will do. Agreed. I'll take care of it." But every email address he'd used now resolved to nothing. Not deleted, not inactive, as if it had never been created. The replies to his emails were still there. People had spoken to him. When HR presented the findings in a meeting, the tone shifted. At first there was laughter. Someone joked about a corporate ghost. Someone else said it was probably a contractor paid under the table years ago. Then, HR said the words carefully. "There is no record of this person ever existing, anywhere. No birth certificate. No medical records. No education history. No credit file. No social media. No death record." The room went quiet. One man stood up abruptly and said, "That's impossible. I had lunch with him. For years." Another snapped, "You're telling me I imagined 10 years of working next to someone?" Voices rose. Accusations followed. HR was accused of incompetence, of gaslighting, of trying to cover up something illegal. One woman began to cry. The meeting ended early. Over the next few days, something unsettling emerged. People's memories of Martin began to conflict. Not about small things, but about fundamentals. Some remembered him as married. Others were certain he lived alone. Some remembered him having a brother. Others insisted he never spoke about family at all. When confronted with these discrepancies, people became defensive, angry. One argument escalated into shouting when two colleagues accused each other of lying about conversations they'd had with him. Security footage was reviewed. The cameras showed the office exactly as expected. People arriving, leaving, working, but the desk by the windows was strange, often empty, sometimes blocked by passing bodies. Occasionally, a chair would be slightly pulled back, as if recently vacated. No clear image ever showed Martin, yet timestamps aligned with email, sends badge swipes, project approvals. It was as if the systems remembered him abstractly, but reality refused to render him. Then things escalated. One employee claimed she heard his voice. Late one evening, working alone, she said she heard him say her name quietly. From behind her, she turned. No one there. The security logs confirmed she was alone in the building. Another employee found a mug in the break room cupboard. Plain white, his mug, she was certain of it. On the bottom, in faded marker, was a name. Martin. Facilities had no record of it being purchased. When HR removed the mug, she became furious. Not just upset, enraged. She demanded it back, insisting they had no right to erase him. That word began appearing in complaints. Erase. People accused the company of erasing him, of rewriting history, of pretending someone didn't exist because it was convenient. One employee resigned, citing psychological distress caused by enforced denial of lived experience. And then, just as suddenly, the memories began to fade. Not vanish, soften. Details slipped. His voice became harder to recall. His face blurred in the mind's eye. People still remembered that he'd been there, but fewer could say how he laughed, or what he liked in his tea. The argument stopped. HR quietly closed the investigation. The desk by the windows was reassigned. Months later, Claire found something in an old archive folder marked miscellaneous. A printed meeting agenda. Attendees listed. At the bottom, handwritten, slightly slanted. M. She stared at it for a long time. When she went back the next day to show her supervisor, the folder was gone. Not moved. Not misfiled. Gone. Years later, former employees were interviewed anonymously about their time at the company. Most didn't remember Martin. A few hesitated, then said, "There was someone, I think." Only one said this: "I don't care what the records say. He was real, and whatever he was, he didn't leave. He was removed. No evidence ever surfaced. No explanation satisfied everyone. Psychologists suggested shared false memory. Sociologists suggested group narrative reinforcement, but none of them could explain the emails, or the badge logs, or the way people reacted when told he didn't exist, as if denying him felt like losing something important, something human." So tonight, as you settle in and the world grows quiet, ask yourself this: if enough people remember you, if your presence leaves marks on places, systems, and lives, what does it take to truly exist, and what does it take to be erased? Thank you for spending your night with Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If this story lingered with you, if it made you uneasy in that quiet, thoughtful way, consider subscribing and joining us again. Sweet dreams, and remember, reality keeps better records than we think until it doesn't.